The final activation of Titan 12 Ragnarok was unlike anything that had come before. Pilot Lim Da-un stood before the massive cylinder containing humanity's ultimate weapon, knowing that bonding with this particular giant might destroy her mind completely. The neural stress readings are off the charts, Dr. Kim So-ra warned from the medical station. This Titan was designed to interface with all the others simultaneously. The mental load could kill you instantly. Then I'll die fighting, Da-un replied simply. Better than watching humanity die slowly. General Yoon Jinna watched the procedure with growing dread. Intelligence reports indicated that the Velthari hegemony had committed their entire military force to one final assault on Earth itself. High Overlord Zethkal, supreme leader of their species, was personally leading a fleet of over 1,000 warships toward humanity's home system. If Ragnarok fails to activate, we lose everything, she told Admiral Park over the communication link. Every human colony, every settlement, every person we've ever saved. The neural interface process began with Da-un's consciousness merging not just with Titan 12, but with the entire network of active pilots. Through their shared connection, she suddenly experienced the memories and skills of all 11 other Titans simultaneously. The sensation should have driven her insane. Instead, something extraordinary happened. Her mind expanded to accommodate the massive influx of information, and for the first time, the true purpose of the Titan network became clear. They're not just individual weapons, she whispered as understanding flooded through her. They're components of a single intelligence. We're all parts of something larger. Across the solar system, Admiral Park coordinated humanity's final defense. Every operational warship, every orbital platform, every weapon that could fire was positioned between Earth and the approaching Velthari fleet. It was an impressive force by human standards, but against 1,000 alien dreadnoughts it seemed pitiful. Contact in 6 hours, reported his tactical officer. Enemy fleet maintaining attack formation. And our Titans? All 12 report ready for deployment. Pilot Da-un has successfully bonded with Ragnarok. Park nodded grimly. 12 giants against 1,000 starships. The mathematics were insane, but those 12 Titans represented humanity's only hope for survival. High Overlord Zethkal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Hegemony's Wrath, studying the tactical displays showing Earth's defenses. The human fleet was larger than expected, but still no match for Velthari technology. The giant weapons are our primary concern, his tactical advisor reported. They've proven capable of destroying our largest vessels. Then we will overwhelm them with numbers, Zethkal replied coldly. 12 giants cannot be everywhere at once. We will sacrifice whatever ships necessary to destroy them, then finish the humans at our leisure. The first phase of the battle began in the asteroid belt, where human patrol fleets attempted to slow the Velthari advance. The engagement was brief and brutal, with human ships fighting desperately to buy time for the final preparations on Earth. Captain Lee Do-hyun, now commanding a heavy cruiser, led one of the last stands before the aliens broke through to Earth orbit. His ship and 6 others held their position against overwhelming odds, firing everything they had at the approaching enemy. Sir, we can't hold them much longer, his weapons officer reported as alien fire began to breach their hull. We don't need to hold them, Lee replied calmly. We just need to delay them long enough for the Titans to deploy. His ship exploded in a flash of light, but the sacrifice was not in vain. The Velthari fleet had been slowed just enough for humanity's final gambit to begin. All 12 Titans dropped from Earth orbit simultaneously, their massive forms falling toward different sections of the alien fleet like meteors of war. But this time something was different. The neural network connecting them had evolved beyond simple communication into true collective consciousness. Pilot Lim, Da-un felt the minds of her fellow pilots merging with her own as Ragnarok's systems came online. Through the network, she could experience what all 12 Titans were sensing simultaneously, creating a tactical awareness that spanned the entire battlefield. We are one, she whispered, her voice echoing through the thoughts of every other pilot. 12 bodies, one mind, one purpose. The transformed consciousness that emerged was beyond anything the original Project Titan designers had imagined. The 12 Titans moved with perfect coordination, not because they were following orders, but because they were different parts of the same entity thinking the same thoughts. Captain Cha Soo-jin in Goliath struck the first blow, tearing through the hull of a Velthari cruiser with her bare hands. At the same moment, Bae Joon-ho in Thor was destroying another ship halfway across the battlefield, his actions guided by the same consciousness that moved Cha's body. Impossible, High Overlord Zethkal snarled as he watched his fleet begin to disintegrate. How can they coordinate across such distances? The answer came in the form of Titan 12 Ragnarok materializing next to his flagship. The ultimate Titan was larger than the others, standing 35 meters tall with weapon systems that dwarfed anything humanity had built before. You wanted to know about coordination? Da-eun's voice came through the ship's communication system, though she was speaking for the collective consciousness of all 12 pilots. Let us show you. What followed was less a battle than a demonstration of evolved warfare. The Titans worked together as a single organism, each one covering the other's weak points while striking with precision that no individual could achieve. They moved through the Velthari fleet like antibodies destroying an infection. Zethkal's flagship was the largest vessel in the alien fleet, protected by shields that could withstand planet-killing weapons. But it wasn't designed to resist direct physical assault from multiple 30-meter giants working in perfect coordination. Ragnarok struck first, its massive fists punching through the ship's hull like it was made of paper. Seconds later, Goliath and Atlas joined the assault from different directions, their combined strength tearing the vessel apart from the inside. Your species made a mistake, the collective consciousness told Zethkal as his ship began to break apart around him. You assumed we would remain what we were. But humans adapt, we evolve. We become what we need to become to survive. The High Overlord's last sight was of 12 giants standing among the wreckage of his fleet, their forms glowing with energy that seemed to come from somewhere beyond normal space-time. Dr. Han Minseo monitored the battle from Earth, watching readings that defied all known science. The neural patterns are incredible, she reported to General Yoon. They're not just sharing thoughts anymore. They're existing partially outside normal space, connected to something larger than individual consciousness. Are they still human? Yoon asked. They're what humanity needed to become to survive, Dr. Kim Sora answered. Something new. Something that can protect our species from threats we haven't even imagined yet. The battle lasted only hours, but its outcome echoed across the galaxy. The Velthari hegemony's entire military force was destroyed, their leadership dead. Their empire's expansion permanently ended. As the Titans returned to Earth, news of the victory spread to every human colony, but the celebration was tempered by the realization that humanity's guardians had become something beyond normal human understanding. The 12 pilots could still communicate with ordinary humans, but their consciousness now existed on multiple levels simultaneously. They were individuals, but they were also parts of something greater, connected to each other and to possibilities that transcended normal existence. What happens now? Admiral Park asked during the post-battle briefing. Now we prepare for whatever comes next, Pilot Lim Daeun replied, speaking for the collective consciousness that was still learning to understand itself. The galaxy is vast and there will be other threats. When they come, humanity's guardians will be ready. Years later, as human expansion resumed across the galaxy, other alien civilizations would share whispered warnings about the species whose warriors stood tall as mountains, and whose will to survive burned brighter than stars. They spoke of titans that could appear anywhere, moving through space itself to defend their people. Some aliens chose diplomacy over conflict, remembering the fate of the Velthari hegemony. Others tested humanity's resolve and learned why some species simply refused to die quietly. In the depths of Earth's Siberian facility, General Yoon Jinnah often visited the empty Titan chambers, wondering what other guardians might be needed as humanity ventured further into the unknown. The original Project Titan had been designed to create 12 giants, but the technology remained, waiting for the day when even gods of war might not be enough. But for now, humanity slept peacefully under the protection of its evolved guardians, secure in the knowledge that extinction was no longer a possibility. The Titans walked among the stars, and the galaxy had learned to respect the species that refused to bow to any force, no matter how overwhelming. The war was over. Humanity had survived, and in the vast darkness between the stars, 12 minds touched by something greater than mortality stood eternal watch, ready to rise again whenever their people faced the impossible. Admiral Park Hyun-woo stood in the command center watching the largest military operation in human history unfold. 12 Titans were now operational, their pilots bonded and ready for combat. The neural network connecting them had evolved into something beyond what anyone had expected, creating a collective tactical awareness that made them more than just individual warriors. "All Titans report ready for deployment," announced Commander Jiang Wusung. "Operation Liberation begins in 30 minutes. The target was Kepler 442b, a human colony world that had been captured 3 months ago. Intelligence reports suggested the Velthari were using human prisoners as forced labor to strip mine the planet's resources. It would be the first major offensive operation using multiple Titans working together. Pilot Bay. Junho felt the familiar sensation of neural connection as he bonded with Titan Neuro 9 Thor. The process was routine now, though no less intense. Through the network, he could sense his fellow pilots preparing for the mission. Captain Cha Soo-jin in Goliath, Lee Na-young in Atlas, Kang Ho-seok in Hercules, and 8 others, all linked by a connection that transcended normal human communication. "Target planet is heavily fortified," reported the intelligence officer. "Orbital defense platforms, ground-based weapons, and at least 50,000 Velthari troops. And an unknown number of human prisoners," added Dr. Kim Sora, who had been analyzing intercepted alien communications. "They're being held in camps near the mining operations." Bay felt anger surge through the network as all 12 pilots shared the same thought. Their people were suffering while aliens stripped their world bare. That could not be allowed to continue. The dropships launched from the fleet, each one carrying a 30-meter giant toward the planet's surface. But this time the deployment was coordinated. The Titans would land simultaneously at different points around the main fortress complex, overwhelming the defenders through sheer tactical superiority. Bay's landing zone was designated as the eastern approach, where the heaviest Velthari defenses were positioned. As Thor fell through the atmosphere, he could see the alien installations spread out below like a cancer on the planet's surface. The impact created the usual crater, but Bay was already rolling out of it before the debris settled. Through the network, he felt his fellow pilots landing at their own targets, each one beginning their assigned mission phase. "Multiple contacts approaching from the north," reported pilot Song Ye-jin from Titan 07 Prometheus. "They look like the Bio-Titans we faced last month, but bigger." The Velthari had learned from their defeats. Instead of the 20-meter creatures they had deployed before, these new Bio-Titans stood 25 meters tall and moved with predatory intelligence. Their organic armor rippled with muscle and weapon systems that had been grown rather than built. "Remember the network protocols," Captain Cha Soo-jin reminded them, through their shared connection. "We fight as one entity with 12 bodies." The battle that followed redefined warfare on a galactic scale. The human Titans moved with perfect coordination, their actions guided by the collective tactical awareness of 12 minds thinking as one. When Bay engaged 3 Bio-Titans simultaneously, his fellow pilots provided support through shared sensory data and tactical suggestions. "Weak point at the base of the neck," Lee Na-young observed, her analysis flowing instantly to all the others. "Similar to the creatures we fought on Armstrong's Hope." Bay adjusted his attack accordingly, using Thor's massive strength to grapple with his opponents while striking at their vulnerable spots. The Bio-Titans were fierce, but they were individual creatures fighting alone against an enemy that shared thoughts and strategies instantly. One by one, the alien creatures fell. But the real objective wasn't destroying the defenders. It was reaching the prison camps where human colonists were being held. "I have visual on Camp Alpha," reported pilot Lim Da-yoon from Titan 08 Artemis. "Approximately 2,000 prisoners heavily guarded. Same here at Camp Beta," added another pilot. "The aliens are using them as human shields." This was the challenge the mission planners had feared. The Velthari weren't just holding prisoners, they were positioning them to prevent Titan attacks. A single mistake could kill hundreds of innocent humans. "Switching to precision mode," announced Bay, his systems reconfiguring for delicate work rather than destruction. The other pilots did the same, their massive hands suddenly capable of movements precise enough to pluck individual aliens from guard towers without harming nearby prisoners. The liberation proceeded with surgical precision. Each Titan worked methodically through their assigned camp, removing alien guards while protecting human captives. The neural network allowed them to coordinate perfectly, ensuring no area was left undefended while others were being cleared. "Guard tower at coordinates 12745. Cha Soo-jin communicated through thought rather than words. Three snipers targeting Hercules. Bay turned and eliminated the threat with a single shot from Thor's rifle, the projectile traveling across kilometers to strike precisely where needed. This kind of coordination would have been impossible with conventional forces, but the Titans made it look effortless. Within 2 hours, all 5 prison camps were liberated. Over 8,000 human colonists were free, and the Velthari garrison was completely destroyed. But as the Titans prepared to extract the prisoners, new contacts appeared on their sensors. Massive energy signatures incoming from orbit, reported Admiral Park over the communication link. Something big is headed your way. The Velthari response was a creature that defied classification. It fell from space like a meteor, its impact creating an earthquake that was felt across the continent. When the dust cleared, the Titans found themselves facing something that made their previous opponents look small. The bio-titan that emerged from the crater stood 40 meters tall, its body a fusion of organic tissue and mechanical systems. Multiple weapon arms sprouted from its torso, each one capable of firing projectiles that could penetrate Titan armor. Worst of all, it moved with intelligence that suggested a living pilot was controlling it from within. This is High Commander Zethkal of the Velthari Bioweapon Division, the creature announced, through speakers mounted in its head. You insects have interfered with our operations for the last time. The battle that followed pushed the Titans to their limits. Zethakal's creature was not only larger and stronger than anything they had faced, but it was also smart. It used tactics that countered their network advantage, forcing them to fight as individuals rather than as a coordinated unit. Bay found himself separated from the others, facing one of the creature's weapon arms alone. The Bio-Titan's projectiles hit with enough force to crack his armor, and he could feel Thor's systems beginning to fail under the punishment. Network synchronization at maximum, ordered Captain Cha Su-jin. All pilots, full mental link now. The sensation was overwhelming. Suddenly, Bay wasn't just himself anymore. He was 12 pilots thinking as one entity, their combined experience and reflexes flowing through a single consciousness that happened to be distributed across 12 bodies. The coordinated attack that followed was something beyond conventional warfare. The Titans moved like parts of a single organism, each one anticipating the other's actions perfectly. They struck Zethkal's creature from all directions simultaneously, their weapons finding weak points that individual pilots might have missed. Impossible, the alien commander snarled as his bio-titan began to fail. You're just animals. How can you coordinate like this? Because we're not just animals anymore, Bay replied, his voice speaking for all 12 pilots. We're something you never expected. The final blow came when all 12 Titans fired their primary weapons simultaneously, their projectiles converging on a single point on the Bio-Titan's chest. The creature's armor, designed to withstand individual attacks, couldn't handle the concentrated firepower of an entire Titan squadron. Zethkal's creature collapsed, its systems failing as the alien commander died within its chest cavity. Around the battlefield, Velthari forces that had been fighting desperately suddenly lost their coordination and began to retreat. Target eliminated, reported Captain Cha Su-jin. All prisoners secure and ready for extraction. But even as they celebrated the victory, the pilots knew this was just the beginning. Through their shared consciousness, they could sense something changing in themselves, something that went beyond just piloting giant war machines. We're evolving, whispered pilot Lim Da-un, her thoughts flowing to the others through the network. Each battle makes us more than we were before. Dr. Han Minseo, monitoring from Earth, had detected the same thing. The neural patterns from the Titan pilots were becoming increasingly complex, developing capabilities that hadn't existed in the original design specifications. They're not just pilots anymore, she reported to General Yoon. They're becoming something new, something that might be humanity's next evolutionary step. As the Titans prepared to return to Earth with their rescued prisoners, word of the liberation of Kepler 442b spread across human space, but it also reached the Velthari High Command, where leaders who had dismissed humans as primitive insects were beginning to realize they faced an enemy that grew stronger with each battle. Commander Jang Woo-sung watched another volunteer die during the neural bonding process. The young lieutenant had lasted longer than most, almost achieving connection with Titan 04 before his brain simply shut down from the strain. It was the 15th death this week, and Yang was running out of qualified candidates. "Sir, we have another volunteer," reported his aide. bringing forward a determined-looking woman in pilot gear. "I'm Lena Young," she said, saluting crisply. "I've read all the reports, sir. I know the risks." Jang studied her file. Excellent pilot scores, strong psychological evaluations, but that meant little when facing the neural interface. "Why do you want to do this, Lieutenant?" "Because my family was on New Tokyo, sir, and because someone has to." That simple answer told Jang everything he needed to know. Personal motivation often made the difference between success and failure in the bonding process.
Very well.
"You'll attempt bonding with Titan 03. We're calling it Atlas." The first Titan deployment came sooner than anyone expected. The Velthari fleet attacking New Berlin had been detected 12 hours out from the planet. Captain Cha Soo-jin, now bonded permanently with Titan 01 Goliath, prepared for humanity's first giant to enter battle. "Remember, you're not just a weapon," General Yoon told her over the communication link. "You're a symbol. Every human in the galaxy will be watching what happens today." Cha felt the Titan's launch systems engage. She was fired from a specially modified ship like a massive missile, her 30-meter body protected by armor plating and energy shields. As she fell toward New Berlin's surface, she could see the Velthari fleet beginning its bombardment. The impact when she hit the ground created a crater 50 meters wide. Cha rolled to absorb the shock, then stood to her full height. Around her, Velthari ground forces that had been advancing on the colony's main city suddenly stopped in confusion. "What is that?" She heard one alien commander asking over their intercepted communications. "Unknown hostile," came the reply. "Engaging now." The Velthari war machines were impressive by human standards, each one the size of a tank and bristling with weapons. But compared to Goliath, they looked like toys. Cha drew her Titan's primary weapon, a rifle that fired projectiles the size of cars and opened fire. The first shot vaporized 3 enemy machines. The second demolished an entire assault formation. The aliens tried to return fire, but their weapons barely scratched her armor plating. "This is impossible," the Velthari ground commander transmitted to his fleet. "It's some kind of giant human." Cha smiled grimly and began to run toward the enemy lines. Each step covered 50 meters, and her movements were surprisingly graceful for something so large. She had trained for months to move like this, and now it felt natural. The battle became a massacre. Velthari forces that had been unstoppable against normal human defenses found themselves facing an enemy that could step on their vehicles and crush them flat. Cha used the environment as a weapon, throwing boulders the size of buildings and creating avalanches with her footsteps. Admiral Park Hyun-woo watched the battle from orbit, hardly believing what he was seeing. "She's actually winning," he told his staff. "One giant is defeating an entire alien ground army." But the real test came when the Velthari fleet focused their orbital bombardment on Goliath. Beams of energy that could level cities lanced down from space, striking the Titan repeatedly. Cha felt each hit like a physical blow, but her armor held. "Hull integrity at 60%, her system reported. Recommend tactical withdrawal." "Not yet," Cha replied, shouldering her rifle and taking aim at one of the orbiting ships. The weapon was designed for ground targets, but she had an idea. She fired straight up, the massive projectile punching through the atmosphere and striking the alien vessel's hull. The ship didn't explode, but it began to lose altitude, its systems damaged by the unexpected attack. "Impossible," Warlord Kethmore said from his flagship. "How can a ground unit engage orbital targets?" "Sir, recommend we withdraw to analyze this new threat," his tactical officer suggested. Kethmore snarled. "We withdraw from nothing. All ships focus fire on that giant. Destroy it completely." The bombardment intensified, but Cha was already moving. She sprinted across the battlefield, using her incredible speed to stay ahead of the targeting systems. Buildings crumbled around her as she ran, but she reached the space elevator that connected New Berlin's surface to its orbital station. With a grip that could crush steel, she began to climb. "What is it doing?" the Velthari crew asked in confusion as they watched the giant ascend the massive structure. Cha reached the orbital station in minutes, her Titan's strength making the climb easy despite the structure's height. From here, she could see the entire alien fleet spread out before her. More importantly, she could reach them. She leaped from the station toward the nearest Velthari ship, covering the distance in the zero gravity of space. Her impact against the vessel's hull was devastating. Designed to withstand energy weapons, the alien armor couldn't handle 30 meters of engineered muscle applying direct physical force. Cha tore through the ship's hull with her bare hands. creating massive breaches that vented atmosphere and crew into space. The vessel began to break apart under her assault, systems failing as she systematically destroyed everything vital she could reach. "It's inside the destroyer Kethaval," reported the fleet sensor officer. "The ship is lost." Before the aliens could react, Cha was already moving to the next target. In the vacuum of space, her Titan systems allowed her to survive and maneuver using built-in thrusters. She went from ship to ship like a deadly infection, tearing apart the Velthari fleet from the inside. By the time the battle was over, half the alien fleet was destroyed or crippled. The remainder fled to hyperspace, carrying word of humanity's new weapon to the rest of the Velthari hegemony. Back on Earth, Lieutenant Lena Young successfully bonded with Titan 03 Atlas. The neural interface process had nearly killed her, but she emerged from it changed. Her consciousness expanded beyond normal human limits. "How do you feel?" asked Dr. Kim Sora during the post-bonding examination. "Like I'm seeing the world through new eyes," Young replied. "Everything seems smaller now, but also more connected." Dr. Han Minseo was documenting something unexpected in her research. "The pilots are developing abilities beyond what we anticipated," she reported to General Yoon. "They seem to be able to communicate with each other directly, mind to mind." Explain. When Captain Cha was in battle, Lieutenant Ne Young reported feeling echoes of the combat through her neural link. Even though she was thousands of kilometers away, it's as if the Titans are creating a network. This discovery proved crucial when the second Titan deployment occurred. Pilot Kang Ho-seok and Titan 05 Hercules dropped onto the besieged world of Armstrong's Hope, where Velthari forces had learned from their previous defeat and were prepared for giant opponents. The aliens had deployed their own massive war machines, biomechanical creatures that stood 20 meters tall and were bred specifically for combat. When Kang landed, he found himself facing enemies that were closer to his own size. But he wasn't alone. Through the neural network, he could feel Captain Cha's experience flowing into his mind, along with tactical data from the other awakened pilots. The collective knowledge of humanity's Titans guided his movements. The battle was fierce. The Velthari Bio-Titans were strong and vicious, but they lacked the human creativity that made the pilots so effective. Kang used wrestling techniques scaled up to giant proportions, grappling with his enemies and using leverage to overcome their brute strength. "Target the joint connections," Cha's voice whispered through the network. "Their armor is weakest there." Kang followed her advice, tearing apart his opponents with surgical precision. The alien creatures fell one by one until he stood alone among their corpses, victorious. News of the victory spread across human space like wildfire. Colonies that had been preparing for evacuation suddenly found new hope. The giants were real, and they were winning. But in the depths of space, Warlord Kethmore was planning his response. If the humans wanted to escalate the conflict, the Velthari hegemony would show them what true escalation looked like. "Prepare the bioweapons division," he ordered his subordinates. "If they want to field giants, we'll give them monsters to fight." The war was about to become something much deadlier, but humanity's sleeping guardians were still awakening. Soon, 12 Titans would walk among the stars and the galaxy would learn why some species simply refuse to die quietly. Colonel Shin Taiman led the first expedition into the deepest levels of the Titan facility. His team of engineers and scientists followed him through corridors carved from solid rock, their footsteps echoing in the vast emptiness. Emergency lighting flickered on as they walked, activated by sensors that had waited 200 years for human presence. "The scale of this place is incredible," whispered Dr. Han Minseo, the team's historian. She ran her hand along the smooth walls, marveling at the construction. "How did they build something this massive without anyone knowing?" "The same way governments always hide their biggest secrets," Shin replied. "They called it something else and buried it under layers of classification." They reached the main chamber and stopped in awe. The room stretched for kilometers in every direction, filled with rows of cylindrical chambers. Each chamber held a figure that was unmistakably human in shape but wrong in size. The bodies inside were perfectly preserved, standing 30 meters tall with proportions that somehow looked natural, despite their impossible scale. "My God," breathed Dr. Kim So-ra, who had been transferred from Admiral Park's fleet to study the biological aspects of the project. "They're beautiful," and they were. Each figure was perfectly formed, with muscle definition that suggested incredible strength and faces that looked peaceful in their eternal sleep. Men and women both, they stood like sleeping gods waiting for the call to battle. Dr. Han Min-seo accessed the historical archives built into the facility's computer systems. What she found made her sit down heavily in the nearest chair. According to these records, Project Titan began in 2157, she said, her voice shaking. It was a joint effort between every major nation on Earth. They were preparing for something. Preparing for what? Asked Colonel Shin. A threat from space. The project files mention inevitable contact with hostile alien intelligence and the need for guardians capable of defending humanity against superior technology. Kim So-ra studied the biological readouts from the chambers. The genetic modifications are extensive. Enhanced muscle density, reinforced bone structure, improved neural pathways. These aren't just big humans, they're engineered for warfare. But why make them so large? Asked one of the engineers. Psychological warfare, Shin realized. An enemy might be prepared to fight human-sized soldiers. But 30-meter giants? That's something else entirely. Meanwhile, Captain Cha Soo-jin was volunteering for the most dangerous assignment in human history. The young pilot stood before General Yoon Jinna in a briefing room deep within the facility, knowing that what she was about to do might kill her. The neural interface technology is primitive by today's standards, Dr. Han Min-seo explained, showing holographic displays of the connection process. Direct neural link to the giant's brain. The pilot's consciousness will merge with the Titan's body. What are the risks? Cha asked, though she already knew she would accept regardless of the answer. Complete neural shutdown, permanent brain damage, or psychological fragmentation, the doctor replied honestly. The few test records we have from the original project show a 70% fatality rate. Cha nodded. And if I don't try? General Yoon gestured to the tactical displays showing the continuing alien attacks. Humanity dies. The choice is yours, Captain. Then there's no choice at all. The preparation took hours. Cha was fitted with a neural interface crown that looked like something from a nightmare, with dozens of cables that would plug directly into her brain. The medical team worked carefully, knowing that one mistake could kill her instantly. The Titan you'll be bonding with is designated Titan Mo-1, Dr. Kim So-ra explained. We've taken to calling it Goliath. All biological systems are functioning normally, just waiting for a pilot. Cha was lowered into a chamber next to the Titan's cylinder. As the neural interface activated, she felt her consciousness expand in ways that human language couldn't describe. Suddenly, she wasn't just Cha Soo-jin anymore. She was something much larger. The feeling was overwhelming. Every sensation was amplified beyond normal human experience. She could feel the Titan's massive heart beating, could sense the incredible power contained in its engineered muscles. For a terrifying moment, she thought she might lose herself entirely in the giant's body. Then training kicked in. She focused on moving just one finger, concentrating all her will on that simple action. In the chamber, the Titan's massive hand twitched slightly. Neural link established, reported the medical team. Pilot consciousness stable. Across human space, the alien attacks continued. Admiral Park Hyun-woo coordinated desperate defensive actions, but every battle ended the same way. Human ships were outgunned and outnumbered. Colonies fell one by one to the Velthari bombardment. We need more time, he told General Yoon during their daily briefing. How long until the Titans are ready? The first one is bonding with its pilot now. If successful, we could have Goliath operational within days. And if unsuccessful, then we find another volunteer and try again. Park looked at the tactical display showing red markers where human colonies used to be. We're running out of volunteers and colonies both. In the Velthari fleet, Warlord Kethmore was pleased with their progress. The human resistance was crumbling faster than expected. Their ships were primitive, their tactics predictable, their spirit breaking with each defeat. The next target is the industrial world of New Berlin, he told his subordinates. Destroy their manufacturing capability, and they'll have no choice but to surrender. His intelligence officers had reported rumors of some secret human weapon, but Kethmore dismissed them. What could these primitive creatures possibly have that could threaten the might of the Velthari hegemony? Back on Earth, Captain Cha Soo-jin was learning to walk again. The neural link allowed her to control Titan 01's massive body, but the experience was unlike anything she had ever imagined. Each step shook the ground. Each movement required careful thought to avoid destroying the facility around her. How does it feel? asked Dr. Kim Sora over the communication system. Like being a god, Cha replied honestly. But a very clumsy god who might accidentally step on something important. The Titan's sensory systems were incredible. She could see across vast distances, hear sounds too quiet for normal human ears, feel vibrations through the ground that warned of approaching vehicles. The body was a weapon in itself, but it also carried armaments that made battleship guns look like toys. We're going to run combat simulation, announced Colonel Shin. You need to learn to fight in that body before we deploy you. The training was intense. Cha learned to move with the grace that 30 meters of engineered muscle could provide. She practiced with weapons designed for Titans, each one capable of destroying tanks with single shots. Most importantly, she learned to think like a giant, to use her size and strength as tactical advantages. Meanwhile, other volunteers were preparing for their own bonding procedures. The process was dangerous and not everyone survived, but those who did emerged changed. They were still human, but they were also something more. The neural link creates a permanent connection, Dr. Han Mincio discovered during her research. Even when disconnected from the Titans, the pilots retain enhanced reflexes and spatial awareness. Are we changing them into something that isn't human anymore? General Yoon asked. We're changing them into something that can save humanity, the doctor replied. Whether that's still human or not might not matter. As the first Titan prepared for deployment, signals came in from the Outer Rim. The Velthari were approaching New Berlin with their largest fleet yet. 3 million civilians in the heart of human industrial capacity were about to be destroyed. But this time, humanity wouldn't face the aliens with just ships and conventional weapons. This time, a giant would walk among the stars. And the galaxy would learn that humans could be monsters too when their survival was at stake. Captain Cha Soo-jin felt Titan 01's systems powering up for combat deployment. Soon she would drop from orbit like a falling star and the real war would begin. Admiral Park Hyun-woo stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, staring at the holographic display that showed 3 red dots where human colonies used to be. Each dot represented millions of lives lost in a single day. His hands shook as he read the reports again, hoping he had made a mistake. Sir, we're receiving more transmissions from the Outer Rim, said Lieutenant Kim So-ra, her voice barely steady. She was young for a fleet xenobiologist, but her skills had earned her a place on the Admiral's staff. The attacks are coordinated. This wasn't random, Park nodded grimly. 3 colonies, each separated by dozens of light years, had been destroyed within hours of each other. New Tokyo, Armstrong Station, and Haven's Rest were now nothing but cooling debris fields. The attackers had been thorough, leaving no survivors and no intact structures. What do we know about the enemy? Park asked. Kim pulled up another display. Analysis of the weapon signatures suggests plasma bombardment from orbit. The energy levels are beyond anything we've seen before. Whoever did this has technology that makes our best warships look like toys. Across the galaxy, Captain Lee Do-hyun was racing toward New Seoul Colony with every evacuation ship he could gather. His fleet of civilian transports and cargo haulers wasn't built for war, but they were all that stood between 3 million colonists and whatever had destroyed the other worlds. Captain, we're picking up massive energy signatures at the edge of the system, reported his sensor officer. Multiple contacts heading straight for the colony. Lee gritted his teeth. How long until they reach New Seoul? 6 hours, sir. And how long do we need to evacuate everyone? At least 12 hours, sir. Lee knew the math didn't work in their favor. Signal all ships. We evacuate as many as we can, then we fight to buy time for the rest. As his fleet approached New Seoul Colony, Lee saw them for the first time. The alien ships were massive, each one larger than Earth's biggest dreadnoughts. They moved with purpose, ignoring his small fleet as they positioned themselves around the planet. The colony's planetary defense systems opened fire first. Massive railguns and missile batteries launched everything they had at the alien fleet. Lee watched in horror as the weapons simply bounced off invisible. Shields or were destroyed by point defense systems before they could reach their targets. Then the aliens fired. Back. Beams of pure energy lanced down from orbit, each one bright enough to be seen from space. Where they touched the planet's surface, cities vanished in balls of superheated plasma. The atmosphere itself seemed to burn as the bombardment continued. Get those transports to the surface now, Lee shouted over the sound of alarms. Load everyone you can. His ships dove toward the planet's surface, racing against time as more and more cities disappeared under the alien bombardment. Transport after transport filled with desperate refugees, lifting off just ahead of the destruction sweeping across the continent. Meanwhile, deep beneath Earth's frozen surface, General Yoon Jina walked through corridors that hadn't seen human footsteps in over a century. The Siberian facility was so classified that only a handful of people in the entire government knew it existed. "General, are you certain about this?" asked Colonel Shin Tae-min, her chief of security. "The project was sealed for good reasons." "The reasons for sealing it no longer matter," Yoon replied, stopping before a massive vault door marked with warnings in dozens of languages. "If we don't act now, there won't be a humanity left to protect." She pressed her palm against the scanner and spoke her authorization code. The vault door, thick enough to survive a nuclear blast, slowly ground open. Cold air rushed out, carrying the scent of metal and something else, something that made both officers step back instinctively. Inside the vault, rows of transparent cylinders stretched into the darkness. Each cylinder was large enough to hold a person, but the figures inside were wrong somehow. Too tall, too broad, too perfect to be entirely human. "Project Titan," Yoon whispered. "Humanity's sleeping guardians." Back in space, Captain Lee Do-hyun was losing the battle to save New Seoul Colony. Half his evacuation fleet was already destroyed, and the planet below was dying under the alien bombardment. Still, he kept fighting, using his small ships to harass the enemy and draw their fire away from the civilian transports. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the lead alien vessel," his communications officer reported. "Put it through." The main screen flickered, then showed a creature that was clearly not human. It stood upright like a man, but its skin was scaled and its eyes were the color of old blood. When it spoke, its voice was translated by the ship's computer. "I am Warlord Kethmore of the Velthari hegemony. Your species has spread too far into our territory. This ends now." Lee found his voice. "These are human colonies. We have the right to—" "You have no rights," the alien interrupted. "You are insects that have forgotten your place. We will remind you." The transmission cut off, and immediately the alien bombardment intensified. Lee watched helplessly as the last major city on New Seoul disappeared in a flash of light. "Sir, emergency transmission from Earth Command," his communications officer called out. "It's Admiral Park." Park's face appeared on the screen, and Lee could see the strain in the older man's eyes. "Captain, fall back to the rally point immediately. New orders are coming down from the highest levels." "Sir, there are still people down there. That's an order, Captain. Leave now or we'll lose you too." Lee looked at the burning planet one more time, then gave the order to retreat. As his remaining ships jumped to hyperspace, he wondered if running away was the right choice. On Earth, Admiral Park was asking himself the same question. The reports kept coming in from across human space. More colonies under attack, more fleets destroyed, more millions of lives lost. Humanity's expansion into the galaxy was being rolled back system by system. But in the depths of the Siberian facility, something was beginning to stir. Machines that had been silent for 2 centuries hummed to life. Ancient systems ran through diagnostic checks. And in the transparent cylinders, 30-meter-tall figures that had once been human began to wake from their long sleep. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin. But the enemy had no idea what they had awakened. Soon, giants would walk among the stars once more, and the galaxy would learn that some species simply refused to die quietly.